I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Welcome back. Today we're talking with IP attorney Erik Pelton about how he trains his legal student interns. Erik began his career as a trademark examiner for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office before he launched his own boutique trademark practice in Falls Church, Virginia. There, he focuses on simplifying the process of protecting a company's brands and marks. But we're not talking about protecting brands and marks today. We're talking about how to hire and train legal interns. Why? Well, Erik and I both use legal interns as a way to create a hiring pipeline because we want to train them early on to get them acclimated to what we do and how we do it. And in service, delivering that consistent result is what we're looking for. So we need people who know how to do things the way we want to deliver them. But rather than spoil all the good points, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to that interview. Hey, 5-Star listeners. Before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chat bots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Erik Pelton, I'm excited to have you today. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to hear your voice again.
Thank you. Erik, I wanted to have you on because in talking with you in a variety of locations, what I really liked was how you've set up a system to train interns, law students, associates. And that's important for client service because it's not just bring somebody in and hope they do the best. Now, every law firm I've been at, and most of the ones I've talked to where our friends have been at, it's usually you come in, you start with a few hours of paperwork, then they show you to your desk and dump a pile of work on you. The problem is there's no quality control, kind of purging out bad habits. And so what we as owners and people in control of a practice need to be thinking about is how do we get people to do things the way we want them to do so that we're delivering a consistent product to our clients.
Yeah. And, in law school, unless you do a really good clinical experience, most students, most young attorneys don't have any or very much experience actually working with clients, talking to opposing counsel, talking to potential clients. And so, I'll step back in a second and talk about all of the training that we do, but a lot of it is just that exposure, sitting in on every type of activity and meeting that we do at the office, so that when I ask someone later to say, oh, I'll be out of town, I need you to talk to this potential client, they don't have to make it up on the run. They know how we do it. They know what an effective way to do it is. When I was a young attorney, I didn't have great mentors, unfortunately. I blame myself. I didn't seek them out. But so I had to make up a lot of it as I went along. And that's really part of the philosophy for me in developing these training programs, is to benefit from having well-trained employees, but also to give back, even if they don't work for me long-term, to give back that they see what practice is like and what the real world is like.
Right. And going to the kind of to rephrase what you were saying, law school, unless you do those clinical experiences, you're missing out on that key word of experience. Law school is really good at teaching you background knowledge, but when you get out, you've never done anything. You've just read about it in a book. and maybe answered some questions. And my sneaking suspicion, having been practicing now for over a decade, when I got out, there was that law schools don't teach you how to do anything. It's worthless. I've been told that. I have heard that as a mid-level associate and keep hearing that. But my suspicion is people have been saying that since law school was invented.
Well, they teach you how to research. They teach you how to analyze. They teach you how to argue, right? To state your case or to rebut somebody else's case. But again, in managing client service and in growing a business as entrepreneurs, they don't teach you any of those skills. And so they don't teach you, how do you deal with a client who's really difficult, who doesn't want to listen to your advice? Or how do you deliver bad news to a client? Because if you have bad news for a client, we both know you can't run from it. You shouldn't hide from it for very long because it's not going to get any easier to deliver the bad news. So you have to do it. But there are ways that are better than other to actually deliver the bad news. And law school doesn't teach you any of those things. And I went straight from college to law school, so I had very little experience in the workforce. I did do 1 million internships and part-time jobs and working in restaurants and all of those things, but I had very little real-world experience.
Right. And there are two parts of what we're talking about, or what a product that a legal consumer is buying. Not only are they buying, the move the needle result from us, whether it's estate planning for me, IP trademark protection from you. That's part of it. We want people to know how to get things done, not just if your mark looks like this, it's probably not infringing book learning, but the nuts and bolts. Here's how to fill out the form or how to do the search on the website. That part of that service, the skills, and then it's the people service skills that law school certainly isn't teaching as well. So it's two sets of things that we're really looking to get into our employees' heads.
And really, it's probably easier, at least in my field, to differentiate myself and my practice from the competitors on the service side of things than on the knowledge and practical aspects. There's not as much of a variety, right? The bell curve maybe is not as wide on the practice side as it is on the service side, because I know there are some law firms that have horrible service. There are law firms that don't return phone calls. There are law firms that don't have good websites with accessible information, basic biographical information, basic thought leadership information. And so I know that when it comes to service, I can really differentiate myself from 90% of the competition.
Right. And that's part of what we're getting at here is if we can set ourselves apart in how to better deliver that, it makes it easier and it can make up for the undifferentiated, everybody's basically the same. Because, I've got a pretty deep niche in international estate tax for individuals, and that's useful. But a lot of people, ultimately everybody's got the same access to the same laws. I don't have any patented legal strategies that I can keep people out of. As much as I can fence out people, it's really only as good as the things that they can all do as well.
Yeah, and this is why I've spoken frequently on my blog and in my content about how artificial intelligence and computers are not going to replace attorneys, even though lots of people probably prognosticate that they will replace a lot of the legal field. They can't provide service. They might know how to find the answers, but they might not know how to ask the questions, and they don't know the nuance of how to provide the service, but also how to analyze all of that information in the larger context. That what we do is not just a science. It's not just words and rules and answers. It's an art form as well. Knowing how to manage the system, knowing how to manipulate the information to give you the best odds of achieving the results that you want.
Right. I like to think of it as just about anything will work for you, will work, kind of period, but will it work for you? A will works. Does it work for you in your situation? If we're worried about, heirs fighting later, we may not want to do that. We may want to look at another way of transmitting assets. A copyright will work for you unless you've got something that needs to be patented.
Right. Yeah. You can fill out the form. Just because you successfully put information in each field on the form doesn't mean you have proper protection. And, people come to me all the time because they hired LegalZoom or some other automated service to do it. It's just obviously a very different meaning of the word service. But because they hired something like LegalZoom and they came back with tremendous mistakes that sometimes can't even be fixed and you have to start all over again.
Right. It exists for some people. For what we as lawyers are doing, we're at the high end of the cost spectrum because we're there for more unique cases where it pays to spend the money. If you're okay with the generic product and kind of doing it yourself, that's fine. Part of the reason that we do content marketing, you're putting a lot of information out to help the people who weren't going to hire you anyway, but it's also demonstrating to the people who will hire you, hey, I do know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, actually, to go back to training, that I try to work with my younger students and associates, is that I'm never afraid of giving away information. In fact, when I talk about a complex situation or principle in trademark law and show how you might find the solution or how you navigate it, I'm not making it easier for someone to do it on their own. I'm showing how, unless you have a lot of experience in years and number of cases, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to navigate it on your own, even if you spent an enormous amount of time on it.
Right. We're here to speed things up so you can do something else.
Yeah.
And so, to get back to the training program, what does your training program look like?
Yeah. So for about the last 10 years, I've been in practice for 20 years. For about the last 10 years, I've had an intern program. I'm fortunate, outside in the Washington, D.C. area, there's a wealth of law schools with great students and candidates. And it happens to be that many of them have intellectual property programs or focuses available. And so I started this internship program, and almost every semester and every summer for the last 10 years, I have had probably an average of 2 interns. And except for one, all of the associates that I've hired over the last 10 years were former interns or law clerks. Because hiring someone, when you're a small firm, when you're a very small firm, hiring someone is a tremendous expense and experience and risk, right? And so it's so much easier, I found, to hire someone whose work I know, whose personality I know, whose character I know, as a result of having already worked together in some respect, than to hire someone based on based on 1 or 2 or 3 interviews or a day together or whatever that may be. This has worked out tremendously for me because it's created a pipeline, basically, of people who are available if I should need to hire somebody.
Right. And they've got the experience with you. I'm assuming you're treating them as well as you should be treating them. So even if they leave and never come back, they're thinking well on you. If they go get the big firm IP job and they're there, and when somebody calls and says, "Hey, we need something, but we can't afford full fare at a AmLaw 100," they still know somebody they do like who can handle all of it.
It actually is a potential referral source, as you mentioned, and it's actually great to have these people who worked with me when they were younger and then go out and do other great things if they're not working for me, and to stay in touch and to see their careers develop and to maybe have played some small role in that. And I always tell them about halfway through the semester, if you find that working for a small firm is not your cup of tea, you see how we are involved in everything: marketing, client service, office management, in addition to the client work, all of it, all the time. Or you see that trademarks is not really what interests you. Now that you know a lot more about it, you know the nature of the work, that's actually great. You now don't have to worry about learning that later on when you're maybe committed to a job and you've got a salary on the line, and it's much more complicated to come to the realization that this really isn't your thing. So even from their perspective, even if it's not a wonderful semester, they're getting something out of it. And out of, I mean, it's got to be about 50 interns now over those 10 years, maybe even more. I can say only 2 or 3 have been a real difficult experience where they weren't producing good work, or they weren't happy, or they were difficult people. And that's a very, very small number.
Right. So I think I heard this, but I'd rather you just say it explicitly. Like, are your interns only there for one semester at a time?
They're generally there for one semester at a time. Another great thing of kind of the way that I set it up, whether it was intentionally or just fell into it, is that then if their internship is not the end of their 3rd year and they're really good, then I can offer them to stay on, and we then turn it into a law clerk position, which is slightly more advanced than an intern. If they enjoyed it, we enjoyed them, they want to get more experience, it's a great builder for their resume. Multiple former interns and law clerks who've worked in our office have gone on to get hired at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office or at other well-known IP firms, like you mentioned, some small firms, some big firms. In fact, one of my first interns, actually many years ago, just got a general counsel position with a really big company that has a lot of intellectual property. So he does lots of other law too now, not just trademark, but that was really, wonderful to see his career grow to this amazing opportunity for him.
Interesting. So it's actually you're hiring them first for an internship position, and if they're good enough / they still have time in school, they get promoted to a law clerk, which is doing different things.
It is honestly doing more of the same with a little bit more responsibility and a little bit less review, but it's not totally different work. And I guess it happens to be, as you progress in law school, you generally have more time available. Your schedule is a little bit lighter, or your readings aren't as heavy as they were in first year. So if somebody is, an intern, but for the summer between 2nd year and 3rd year, and then they want to work part-time 3rd year, that works out great.
Okay. Do you have them? So there are summer ones. You can have them during the school semester. Would you have that first semester intern during a school semester where they're part-time, or is this a full-time?
So yes, but one of the lessons that I've learned along the way is that a minimum time commitment is really important. And I make that up front, and it's more for them than it is for us. I've told them that unless they have a minimum of 20 and preferably 25 hours a week, that they don't get nearly the same experience. And we really won't let anyone into the program if they can't commit to those hours, because things, in my practice at least, move so quickly sometimes. One day we're getting a new matter. The next day we're working on that matter. The 3rd day we're sending it out. And then maybe a few days later, something else happens in reaction to it. If they're only there 1 day a week, they're only seeing a small sliver of that process, and they're missing out on being able to see the whole spectrum of the work that they're working on and that we're working on. So the return on investment for them, I find, is much more significant when they can commit those hours.
Interesting. Yeah, because then you're also selecting then for the students who can, they have the time, which is probably easier during a summer off when they should be working anyway, but it's probably harder during school time to fit in a full part-time job instead of a 10 hours per week part-time job.
Yeah, it's not easy. So they're making a commitment, and they obviously have some interest in trademark law and presumably in a potential career in trademark law. I will say the second most important lesson that I learned is that prior to 2020, we always required them to be on site all of the time, all of the hours. Every once in a while, I might let them do some sort of project from home on other hours. But that, again, they got so much more out of it by being able to soak in all that was happening in our office and not being afraid to ask a question quickly as soon as a question arose. The last thing I want is for them to be not sure which direction to go in and maybe pick one direction. And then 8 hours later, when they bring it to me to review, and I could have in 30 seconds told them they were going down the wrong direction and saved all of us a lot of time and energy. And I find that unless they're in the office next door, they're more reluctant to ask those questions in a timely manner.
Right. I mean, I've got 2 legal interns right now. We typically start each of their day, or we've got a roundup meeting that's 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure they know what they're doing, they know what questions to ask, and they've got all the tools for the day. But because of work from home, I haven't seen either of them in person since January or February. And they've been working from home since then. They're doing the things they should be doing, but I know they're missing out on the ability that they had when I forced them to work in the office with me, of just being able to walk in and say, all right, well, we need direction on these 3 things.
Yeah, well, everybody has to adapt in 2020 and working from home. Your method of checking in every morning sounds great. And then if they have multiple things to work on and none of them are due today, right? If they get lost on something, maybe they're at least, all right, you know what, I'll work on the other thing and I'll come back to our meeting tomorrow morning and I know I can ask for direction there.
Exactly. Like, I optimize my projects for them in, like, they're client related, but they're never time sensitive.
Yeah. That's another.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if they don't get to it today or even next week, it's fine, because they're out of the current client service delivery loop. And yeah, go.
I was just going to say, I didn't want to step over you, but another valuable lesson is don't give an intern something that is time sensitive. They shouldn't have to work under that time pressure, and you shouldn't have the stress of wondering when or how it will be done or how good it will be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but it's also not overloading them with things that they're not going to be able to do. Even if they've been there for a while, you don't want to put the pressure on them and the potential for real disappointment on your side, that frustration on their side of having to go back and clean things up that would have to go to a client. There's a reason you've got other people who should be doing that work. The interns, like you said, are there to learn. You're giving back, but you're not giving them the best things yet.
Yeah. And before they actually, in my office, we've created a program over time where I've got literally a binder full of materials and a set order that they're going to read them. And this is really important. They spend essentially the first 2 weeks just reading and training. And then the first few projects that I'm going to give them, I know exactly what type of projects they are so that they can get the fundamentals, the building blocks, and learn from there. And I'm fortunate because of the way that the deadlines work in my office. It'll often be before a semester or a new intern even starts. It might be a month before, and I might have a matter where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a perfect first or second case for our next semester intern. I'll put it aside and I'll wait for them, because I'd rather that they have the perfect type of case to learn on, where the issues are clear and foundational so they can build on that, rather than inundate them with some really complex matter where you might have to explain, oh, well, this will never happen again, but you have to learn about it for this particular case, kind of thing.
No, I mean, it's really interesting to hear that you've got 2 weeks of work. So you're requiring essentially, and you're investing 50 hours of paid time where you're not seeing a direct return yet. You know that your minimum buy-in is 50 hours times hourly rate plus excise taxes. So I'm going to just make, rough numbers. You're burning $1,000 on them in training before they even start putting in effort to move a needle for you.
Yeah. And I've never thought of it exactly that way, but it's a great point. But I believe it's absolutely worth the investment, because if I've trained them well, both of us are going to get so much more out of the rest of the time. And laying that foundation is the key.
Right. So I mean, in thinking of 2 weeks, a 2 week training program, what you're, it's some sort of, let's give the full forest of intellectual property matters that you're covering so that they can see where they are. And then what else from there? Are you giving them like prior filings to look over?
Yeah, a lot of prior filings so that they can see both the procedures of how things work and our writing style, because they're representing me, right? And in the end, something they work on, I'll edit, proof. I have to sign my name to it. They can't sign their name to it. So if they're going to, if I'm going to sign my name to it, it better be good and it better not deviate too much from how I would have done it myself. So a lot of it is learning that style. And, again, that it really pays off, but it takes a little bit of time up front, obviously, to organize that and set it in motion, but it's worthwhile.
Interesting. So how much of that binder of stuff is materials you've created, whether it's, go watch all my YouTube videos, read, the last 50 blog posts versus here's, so-and-so on patents and trademarks, read chapters 3 through 5 of the treatise?
It's much less of the latter, much less treatise, because I generally only hire interns who've already had the foundational coursework in law school. And I look at that first 2 weeks of teaching them about the real world and teaching them about how it's done in the real world. And so it's a lot of prior filings that we've worked on, reading the government's materials as well as our materials. But I do also sprinkle in articles like the top case summaries from the last year that's done by somebody reputable that I trust, as well as a few articles about ethics, because I want them to always be thinking about what are the things in your back of your head that are the potential traps and pitfalls that we always have to be thinking about. And right from the start, let them sit in on all types of meetings. So if we have a weekly meeting in the office to talk about the dockets for the week, sit in on that. If I've got a meeting with a call with a potential client, sit in on that. If I've got a call with an opposing counsel to talk about discovery in a matter, sit in on that. So that from the start, at least sitting in, they get the full exposure to all the types of things we work on.
Right. So that going back to your minimum 25 hours is not 25 hours of productive work. It's, some fraction is going to be productive work and some fraction is listen and learn by being in the room when decisions are made.
Yeah. And I really view it almost as it's almost like a class for them. And they are, they're fortunate to be getting paid, I guess, but it's a class in the practice and in the real world. And in fact, I take it even further. You mentioned the investment of me paying them while they're learning and training. I also will take them to conferences or hearings or CLE type events, even networking events. Again, I want them to see this is what it's like being a lawyer. Because say you go start your own firm or you join another small firm and they say, go to the Chamber of Commerce meeting and network with these people. I want them to be able to say, oh, I know what that's like. I can handle that. Rather than the 27-year-old Erik who was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody ever showed me how to do this. I guess I'll either just hide in a corner or I'll just fake it until something happens. And I wish that I had that. I wish that I had the knowledge at the time to seek out mentors. And I wish that I had people as mentors who had found me and said, let me take you under my wing and show you a little bit about what it's like to be a lawyer. In addition to reading the cases and writing the memos, there's a lot of other things that go into it.
Right. And I mean, in terms of taking them to CLEs, that's something that I have encouraged my interns to do because, at least here in Texas, the state bar lets any law student attend the state-sponsored CLEs for free, which is great. If I'm taking them, and I had my 2 interns go to the Advanced Estate Planning CLE this summer, it's a 4-day thing of people talking about the nuts and bolts. This is how you do the estate planning. I've ultimately contributed to their training budget at zero cost, zero out-of-pocket cost, other than their salary to sit there and watch the CLE.
And I take it, I'll take it even one further. I often just pay the registration costs because there usually are student fees or, young associate fees that are the least expensive and relatively inexpensive. And if I'm bringing them to the conference, they're there representing me. Again,
Mhm.
I expect them to be professional and work. They're with me. They're representing me. I'll pay for the cost. And yeah, I'm paying for their long-term development that they may go most likely 9 out of 10 times are going to serve somebody else, but that's okay. When you add it all up, it's an investment in the community of lawyers and future lawyers, and it comes back to pay off when I do hire one of them and they're already trained and they're already responsible and they already know the deal, and they can hit the ground running.
Awesome. On hiring, you said you're selecting for students who already have the basic coursework in. So is that just for you, the overview of intellectual property? Are there any other courses you're looking for? Or is it really just, demonstrate that you're interested in this practice area a bit?
Right. So in reading resumes and interviewing, on a resume, I look for have they taken the basic trademark or IP survey class. As a secondary bonus, it would be if they've taken like a legal writing class, which many law schools, of course, require anyways. But that's always good to see. And then when they're interviewing or in a cover letter, show me something else that you've done that's demonstrated an interest in trademarks, that you're not just applying for this position because it's one of the 30 positions that were on the job board. you know was there a particular reason that you picked this one because you've done something in your past that led you to an interest in trademarks? And half of them can't make that connection, and they don't get any further consideration. The ones that do, I know, okay, they've got a foundation and they've expressed an interest in trademarks. They know something about it and they want to take it to the next level. That's a great candidate.
Right. In the resumes that I'm seeing right now, because we've got a few open spots, we've processed through, I think, about 8 or 10 applications for this semester. The ones that don't identify why they're applying to my firm, it's one of the things we consider a correctable error on that first application of you may not have thought about it. And I know from having seen applications across multiple firms that I've worked at, their law students just aren't trained to specifically identify how you fit in. They get the letters, they get the example letters that say, you have skills well suited to this or that. The problem is they're law students. They have not developed all of their legal skills. And so the argumentation that they should be putting in those cover letters of, I will be great at your firm because of this, they're not making that specific connection yet. And so that's been the issue of like, yes, I know you have skills from working for a judge, and you have some skills. What you don't have are specific skills to drafting wills and administering estates.
Right. Well, and you might be a little more forgiving than I am, it sounds like, because if I see like a cookie cutter cover letter, that's basically just like, I know that you sent this cover letter to 10 different firms. You just changed a few words. You haven't put in the effort. You're not really interested in working for me. And I don't need to spend any more energy on you.
Yeah, I allow that only because I've got other things that we're grading them on. Like we have some requests in there of make some very specific references to things, so we can still kind of sift out the ones who are copying and pasting, and it's great. Like we'll respond and just say, hey, we were missing this. We were missing some things in the application. Can you take a look at it and resubmit? And if we don't hear from them again, that's perfect.
Well, see, my takeaway from this might be that to develop an actual application, because all I have is a resume and a cover letter and a writing sample, and then we'll select some for an interview. And sometimes you can also, the amazing thing is how much people skills play into all of these things, which comes back to our client service focus. Some people aren't even comfortable like having a conversation about when can we schedule an interview and how do I find your office and those kind of things. And then I can just tell they're probably not a good fit personality and otherwise. Another example is it's so easy in today's world for somebody to spend 10 minutes to have looked at the potential employer's website, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it, pick up a couple interesting things and then drop those in the interview. So if somebody doesn't do that, I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah.
I don't care that you got an A in constitutional law or that you were on the dean's list in college. You didn't have the common sense to like see something that I wrote on my website of the thousands of posts and mention that you looked at my site and you really liked what it like. You're not great at customer service. I can tell you that.
Right. And I mean, one of the things I do is the cover letter is, we direct them, address it to Griswold Strohmeyer. And Griswold's not my name. It's not the name of anybody who, any human who works for me. But it is on, my dog Griswold is listed as an employee on my website as the head of Human Resources. And it's one of the bonus kind of character points. Like if you just address it to Griswold, you can still make it through to the first interview, which is with a staff member. But if you identify that Griswold is a dog, and all you had to do was spend 2 minutes on the website and click on my bio and scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see all 3 of my dogs. And I'm not afraid to tell anybody here because, you're not going to, it's not like if you figure out Griswold is a dog, surprise, you're hired. It's, you just get to round 2.
Right. And then if you drop some Christmas Vacation references, you get your...
Exactly. But it's those sort of things that we're looking for to make it easy, and ultimately making it easy on Brad in my office, who's the first line for reviewing resumes. I'm not the one taking a look at it. Part of my system is there's I think it's 14 or 15 total possible points you can get on the submission. And we've just set it out. He has the scorecard. We go over them after he's scored them just to make sure, there's some wiggle room and making sure my language is clear to him. I don't mind if an applicant mentions they worked at another law firm, but if they call my law firm another law firm, that's a problem. And we had somebody who applied a few weeks ago. The firm name was correct, but they addressed it to 2 people who clearly have never ever worked for me. I mean, just very obviously, these are not people who work here. And, that fell under the embarrassing typo, lose a point. And so they got to the, well, we're just sending you a no, not even a take another look. You're kind of on the cusp, and we still think you're probably there, but just need a little bit of focus.
And this is, it comes down to law school is not teaching these people anything about the real world, interacting with colleagues, interacting with clients, what great service is, what the job of an entrepreneur or an attorney is outside of just producing work. So it is an opportunity to help those people, but I think it sounds like we both agree they need to at least express some minimum competence and a desire to want to learn about those things, and then they're good candidates.
Right.
And those things are really important.
Right. And it's our job as the entrepreneur and the owner to have clarified who are the people who fit in here. What do they look like in terms of how can they present themselves in a way that we can resolve easily? The personality can come through later, all sorts of demographic information. That's not what we're talking about. We're, can you come in? Can you fit in with our people? Whatever that means, can you do the work? Are you interested in this work? Because if you're not interested in this, if you're one of the people who's just firing off 40 resumes to anybody with an inbox, of course you're not interested.
Right. Or, sorry, I can't make it for an interview next Wednesday. I'm supposed to go see a movie with my friend. Why would you tell that to somebody who's potentially hiring you?
Well, in many cases, this is their first real job. And they just full transparency. The listeners at home right now, I know you can't hear me rolling my eyes, but I rolled them really hard on that. Erik, we've been talking for a while. I think we've gotten a lot out of this. As we start to land this plane, is there anything you think we haven't talked about?
I think we covered great amount of information and variety of points on this training and interns and how they interact with client service and law firm management overall. I'd just say, on top of all of that, the sort of icing on the cake for me is it's a way to give back. Again, just to reiterate, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know so much about practicing law in a small firm, particularly. And so it's rewarding is the other great thing. All other things being equal, you get the benefit of also like doing something good for people in the future. And, and I like that.
Oh, Erik, that's a great way to put it. Where can folks find you if they want to know more?
I'm easy to find. It's Erik with a K, Pelton. It's erikpelton.com or any of the social media platforms or YouTube. I've got my own podcast, John. I'm sure you already know that, but I've made it easier for people to find it at erikpelton.live. It'll take you directly to my podcast feed. And I wrote a book for anybody who's got a business or a law firm that's interested in building their brand. It's called Building a Bold Brand. And it's on Amazon. And, it's all about the foundations of what creates a brand that stands apart from the competition and then how to think about protecting it.
Excellent. Erik, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, John.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcounsel.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcounsel.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.